Hi, I'd like to take you through the journey that each of your customers goes from being initially a stranger to you to becoming a customer. The reason there are a series of different steps that you go through and why they're important to understand is because if you try to do things too quickly, if you try to sell too quickly, or you try to push people too much of an experience of your product or service on somebody too early, you'll lose that person. Whereas if you take things at the right pace, and the pace is different for everybody, if you take people at the right pace, you've got much more chance of actually getting a customer. And just down to things, other mistakes that people make. So finding somebody who's sold on your idea, but doesn't necessarily you think is really committed to doing it, but until you get a signature on a contract or some form of payment, you really haven't got a customer. And you may well find that you've lost people because you haven't really completed a sales process. So let's just go through it in order on the left hand side quickly, and we'll just take you through that. So obviously at first you don't know somebody, then there'll be some form of contact made. It might be through a networking event, or they might have found your website. They're starting to show a little bit of interest in what you've got. At that point you've got a prospect, but they obviously then need to be warmed up a little bit, to know a little bit more about you. At some point they've warmed up enough to explore working with you. That doesn't mean that they're a customer, but it does mean that they're interested in the idea that you have to offer in your business, in your product or service, and they're willing to discuss it. They're not ready to sign a contract, they're willing to discuss it and to find out a bit more about what you do, and give you a chance to actually put a promotion or together that might get their interest. At that point, hopefully you end up with somebody who's sold on the idea and does really want to work with you. And as I said, at that point you've actually got to get them signed on the dotted line, and you've delivered a customer. So let's go through it again in a little bit more detail. You've initially found, well, you haven't found, you initially have a stranger that comes to you. You have to make some form of connection with that, to actually find a stranger and turn them into some form of contact. So this might be through you networking. Somebody finds your website, you retweet somebody's post on a tweet on Twitter, and you start to gradually make a little bit of a contact with people. At this point you would normally produce something smallish that shows a little bit about what you do. A small amount of information, because if it's too large you're just going to turn somebody off. And what you're trying to find out there, does somebody show a bit of interest in what you do? So at a networking event, for example, this will be you saying, answering the question, and what do you do? And how do you do it? And if you put that over in the right way with the right format, you'll get somebody hopefully that shows a little bit of interest. They're not a customer, they're just showing interest. So at that point, when somebody shows interest, they need more information. So this might be that you give them an article, they might browse a little bit more on your website, and they will need more information still. And some people will at this point may take forever and need more and more information, which is where keep in touch marketing, getting some way to get back in touch with them periodically over the coming months is really, really important. Because if you don't deal with that situation, you will lose people in the busy world that we live in, until somebody else comes along at just the right time. And now is not just the right time for everybody, but if you keep in touch with people, you'll start to be in their mind, and you'll start to be there when the time comes. So at some point you'll get somebody that moves on to being more of a warm prospect. They've taken a lot of information on you, they've possibly experienced you in some way. Maybe you've given a free consultation, or you've done a short meeting where you discuss in a little bit more detail what you do, and you know that they're more qualified to become one of your customers. Don't just let anyone be your customer. You need to think about having the right ideal customers for you. If you get the wrong type of customers, you'll find over the years you'll end up with a business you don't particularly want. You may well end up with awkward customers that take you a lot of time to deal with, depress you, and make you give a lousy service to your premium prime customers. So picking the right customers and qualifying people is really, really important. at that point, because they're ready to explore working with you, they're not sold on things. They're asking for more details about what you do and what you offer. And in a lot of businesses, this will be some form of consultative kind of sale where you're talking about what you do, and finding out have they got the issues that you can deal with, and then presenting some of the ways that you could deal with those solutions, with those problems. And at some point, you'll feel the conversation switch to being something where they're a bit more sold about your products or service, and they're sold on the idea of working with you. You then need to start doing proposals if that's relevant to your business, get a signature, get some payment, issue an invoice. But obviously at some point, unless they actually follow through and complete that paperwork or whatever your next step is, you haven't really got a customer. So don't drop the ball at that point when you've got so far. So there's lots of places where you can drop the ball. Keep in touch marketing is one that a lot of people don't do properly. The other things that people do are they push too soon. So at the point you've got a prospect that needs more information, if you try to jump into what you would have as a sales meeting, it may be too fast, too soon, and people will back off from you. So you have to work out whether people are moving at the right pace, and you have to have the information and the materials there to allow people to do things a little bit slower if they want to. So I hope that's helped you get a bit of an idea of the model that I use. And there's also a lot more detail in terms of the teaching that I use, but it gives you a bit of an idea of how it all fits together, and we then produce an action plan normally to address those different stages for different types of things, whether it be speaking events, networking, online meeting in some kind, or somebody just visiting your website as a result of advertising, for example. But all of those action plans are all based on knowing where people are in this process and not doing things too quickly and not missing bits out. So I hope that's helped you go from stranger to customer.